Hi guys, welcome to the Haxton channel. My name is Deanna, and this is Cyrilla, the most evilest kitten in the world. Hello, my name's Deanna. Welcome to the Haxton Knits channel. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I think today we're going to continue our talk about traditional knitting styles from around the world. I, of course, started this off with the Orenburg lace knitting after I took a class on interweave, and it just led me down this rabbit hole. So I'm very excited to continue. I think week to week we'll keep talking about different knitting traditions from various parts of the world. So let's get started. If you guys don't mind, I think I'm going to continue to do this tradition of working on my knitting while I talk to you. I find that it just sort of slows me down a little bit. Often I get a little bit flustered and a little bit excited when I start to film, and just having my knitting in my hands really makes a difference. This week I am working on these adorable, teeny tiny little socks. I found this pattern on the Ravelry main page, and actually it's unfortunately with sad news. The Ravelry team was announcing the death of one of their team members and decided to share some of her projects and her works, and that is what led me to this pattern for little teeny tiny Christmas socks. Let me show them to you. They are living in my yarn bowl here, but I am making little socks in every color that I could possibly dig out of my stash, and they're completely addicting. So excuse my noise as I rattle through. I have been working through a bunch of my mini skeins while I did this project, and it's just been an absolute joy. Let me show you. This whole bag is full of various minis I picked out specifically for this project. First of all, I have a whole bunch of these. I think they're called unicorn tails. These are a single ply mini skein from Madelinetosh that I got as part of some sort of clearance event where they just gave you big bags of random minis. So I'll be using some of these for this project. And then also, you may remember my luminosity sweater. It's not mine. The pattern is by Tanis from Tanis Fiber Arts, and I bought a kit from her. She and her husband have an independent yarn dyeing company located in Canada, and just make some of the most brilliant, like poppy, super saturated, in-your-face kind of yarn that I have ever seen, and I absolutely love it. I'm trying to find a very specific skein in here, but you can see their yarn has just a beautiful quality to it. I absolutely love everything that comes out of the dye kettle over at Tanis Fiber Arts, and so I've been enjoying using up these mini skeins for this project. I know I mentioned before that I was looking for something that looked like little Christmas mittens to hang on the wall as bunting, but I didn't want it to be Christmas. I wanted it to be something I could put up year round as a decoration in the house of a obsessed knitter, I guess would be the best way of saying that. So yeah, I'm continuing to work on these, and I'll just work on this project while I talk to you today, I think. I'm actually almost done. That's a shame. I won't have much to knit on here. So last week I was talking to you about Orenburg lace. Specifically, I had just finished watching, I guess it was a class, an online class from Interweave Knits, and I just kind of loved this idea of exploring different traditions from different areas. So this week I thought I would talk a little bit about Cowichan knitting. If this is not a word you're familiar with, so Cowichan is a tribe of peoples, or a group of several tribes of people that are native inhabitants of the Cowichan Valley area, or the part of the world that we would now call Vancouver Island, British Columbia. So prior to European settlement in the area, there was no tradition of knitting among the Cowichan people, but there was weaving, and woven blankets are something that were well known from that region. The yarn used would have been spun from dog fiber or even goat fiber. So it was not until around the mid-1800s that knitting reached this part of the world, as best we can tell. And the region was settled by mostly immigrants from Scotland. There were a number of logging mills and those sorts of things popping up in the area. And so influx of people from Scotland carried with them the knitting tradition and spread that tradition into the local population. And I think this is so awesome because if you look at the knitting, like, yeah, there's some stranded color work connections between what I think of as like the Fair Isle knitting in, the Shetland Islands and stuff like that. But this tradition has become so unique and specific to this area. Local inhabitants took something that was imported in and made it completely their own, and I think that's really cool. The most iconic piece of Cowichan knitting that we know is the Cowichan sweater. And one day I'll be a real professional YouTuber and I'll get like a dress form or something to put things on. But in the meantime, behind me hangs a kind of sad attempt at imitating the Cowichan sweater. This particular sweater I knit, maybe 2012. It was one of the first pieces of knitting where I had spun the yarn with the purpose, like with a project already in mind that I was going to make this sweater. And at the time, I didn't know that this was a tradition or an iconic sweater that had deep roots within a culture. What I knew was that I had seen The Big Lebowski, and the dude wore a sweater that looked kind of like this. And I thought, that's a really cool sweater, and lo and behold, you go on to Ravelry and you can find tons of patterns for the dude sweater. But now I know that the dude was wearing a sweater that was roughly inspired by the sweaters knit by the Cowichan people. And actually my sample looks a little bit closer to the original than the one used in the movie, which was a little bit of a lighter weight sweater. So what is traditional of Cowichan knitting? Most of the items would have been knit in undyed fiber. Usually they use 2 or 3 colors, so it would have been a natural white, a brown, a black, and then sometimes grays, which might have been blended gray and white fiber. And of course this wool would have been coming in with the European settlers. So farmers coming in, traders coming in, would have brought this wool in. The women that were local to the area bought all of this fiber and would clean it and spin it and knit it and then sell the sweaters back by the pound to someone who would, presumably go on and sell the sweaters at market somewhere else. Most of these sweaters would have been knit out of a single ply yarn, so one strand of yarn, but it would have been bulky weight if you're using today's standards or today's terminology. This bulky weight yarn would have been knit up into sweaters, knit in the round from the bottom up using double pointed needles. And these aren't going to be needles that you and I think of, like our little sets of 4 or 5 needles. They may have been knit as many as 8 or 9 or even more needles, just depending on what was available. So needles in this region would have been crafted from whalebone or deer bone, or I even read a source that said bamboo chopsticks were used. So you can tell that these are people who are making use of the tools and the things that were around them to get these beautiful pieces of knitting completed. In fact, I saw several examples of how the yarn was spun, and it's actually really crazy. They would convert old sewing machines into a spinning wheel, basically. They would have one very large bobbin and then of course the foot pedals on the sewing machine. And you can see how this would create, a slower gear ratio or a slower spin, and then that contributes to these larger, thicker plies of yarn as opposed to super fine yarn spun on like a bigger wheel. Of course, I'm not an expert in any of these. I have just been spending some time looking at my local library, digging into my own library. I have some historical books on knitting, and then of course going down the YouTube rabbit hole. And luckily enough, there are quite a few YouTube videos featuring current knitters that are current Cowichan knitters. So of course, I kicked off this whole series of talking about traditional knitting projects when I cast on my Orenburg warm shawl, and I am continuing to work on that. I actually don't have it in my arms right now. I filmed a segment earlier talking about it, so I might pop some of that in. But I am continuing to plug away at that project, and if you want to know more about the Orenburg lace shawl that I am working on, you can of course pop back one episode where I talked about it extensively. But I'm continuing to work on that, continuing to plug away on it. I think this is going to end up being a very long series because I'm still like not even halfway through with the first border. So you do the 4 borders first and then the center square, and I'm like maybe a quarter of a way through that first border, so we'll have lots and lots of these episodes to come. I think the problem is I've been in a little bit of a knitting funk. I haven't really wanted to pick up my knitting. Part of it has been work. My work has been very busy lately. And I have several projects on the needles right now that really require my full attention and my brain. I have to sit sort of at my computer at my desk where my pattern is and follow along row by row. And I just haven't had the brain power lately to work on it. So I have been just plugging away on these adorable little socks. I'll put in pictures of them here. And that's filling the void, but I think I'm not excited about any of my knitting right now, which it happens. You know, we go into these knitting funks. Part of it for me here is the warmer weather creeping back in. Whenever it's cold, I really want to knit. And then when it warms up, I find that I don't want to as often. I think part of it is that I really love when I can knit things that I can wear and that I can use. And so when it starts to warm up here, I know I can't wear my wool socks and I can't wear my wool sweaters. And as a result, I just reach for my knitting less and less often. It is February, but here in Okinawa, the summer is starting to show its face again. So we've had a couple of very cold days followed by very warm days and kind of this undulating back and forth heat wave, cool weather, and lots of rain, of course, to vary in the changing as we go. But I do have a new cast on to share with you. This is, there's not a lot of excitement to see here. Let me show you. Are you ready for this? The big, exciting cast on. I know, okay, just bear with me. This is a little bit of a swatch. The pattern I'm swatching for is called Nightbook, and it is a beautiful all-over colorwork sweater. I do intend to chop off the sleeves, so to speak, so I'm not really going to chop them off. I'm just not going to knit them and turn it into a little bit of a knitted t-shirt, kind of like this one. This pattern that I'm wearing, of course, was my contribution to the Knits in Translation knit-along that Melissa did over on Knitting the Stash a while back. So same idea, I'm going to knit a sweater, but just not knit the sleeves. We'll turn it into a short sleeve shirt of some sort. The yarn I'm using for this were both yarns that I have been introduced to for the first time thanks to the Amirisu Yarn Club. I bought myself a kind of a Christmas gift of the Amirisu Yarn Club last year, and I say last year with surprise because I'm surprised how quickly this went. But this ball of yarn is by an indie dyer based out of Tokyo. The brand is Lemon Jelly Pool. This is her merino her merino sock base, and the colorway is Soiree, and I am really looking forward to knitting with this. It's a beautiful kind of teal green with variations of darker blue and then little speckles of sort of chartreuse. I don't know how well that's going to show up on here, but beautiful, complex, though it reads sort of a single note color. And then my contrast color is this lovely ball of yarn. This is Life in the Long Grass Sport, and the colorway is Prairie. I received 2 or 3 skeins of this yarn, but not in this colorway, from the Yarn Club. My colorway in the Yarn Club was a dark navy blue that was called Night Sky, and a beautiful sort of pale blue with speckles of like gold and all different colors, and that one was called Starlit, which I'll be able to show you in a few episodes. One of my secret knitting projects coming down the pipeline. But I did love the yarn so much that I went and bought a few more skeins, and this is just a lovely, it's a like a pale ballerina pink that slowly shifts into sort of lavender with little speckles of also orange and chartreuse and dark blue. And so, in case you're wondering why I have this hot mess of teeny tiny skeins, I bet viewers of the channel can guess. One of my kittens ate a hole in my skeins of yarn. So as I was winding up the ball, I slowly discovered little sections that had been chewed on. I don't know what I'm going to do about this cat. I do keep my yarn in a room that I close when I'm not in, and up high where she can't reach it. But you know, being a knitter, your yarn is everywhere. You take it everywhere, you put it on the couch, you put it on the table, and I turned my head for a moment and my little cat chews little holes in it, and it's a little bit infuriating. So hopefully I'll have some more of that project to show you in future days. Yeah, I think that's it. That's all I got for knitting. Wow, it's a short episode. Okay. That is everything I have for knitting for you today. Let's talk a little bit about life here in Okinawa. Here in Okinawa, I already mentioned summer is starting to roll in, and of course with the heat coming in, that means we're saying goodbye to the cherry blossom season. The cherry blossom festival is over now, and it's a real shame because during cherry blossom season, I don't know if you know this, the word sakura is the word for cherry blossom, and all of the stores are filled with little sakura flavored goodies. So we've had ice cream and cookies and little tea cakes and mochi and just all the things. It really is one of my favorite times of year. Even Starbucks, you know, comes out with their sakura flavored lattes. This also means we're nearing the end of strawberry season, which doesn't sound like it should be a big deal, but it is. If you've never been to Japan before and you happen to find yourself here, I know it sounds odd, but stop and get some strawberries because they are legit the best strawberries I've ever tasted in my life. Every year when they come into season, I pretty much eat like a carton of strawberries every single day because they are amazing and must be eaten before they are gone. But with that gone, of course, Valentine's Day is over. Valentine's Day is celebrated here in Japan. I think was it a U.S. invention? Where did Valentine's Day start? Did it start in Europe? Did it start in the U.S.? I don't know, but in the United States, Valentine's Day is all about chocolate and bringing little valentines to your sweetheart. And if you're in grade school, bringing little Valentine cards to every single kid in the classroom. I remember we used to make little envelope mailboxes, like little paper, construction paper mailboxes for our desks in grade school. And everyone would come and drop all of their Valentine's Day cards into each of those. It was sort of an unspoken rule as a small child that you had to bring one for every member of the classroom. But here in Japan, it is a celebration of when a woman will tell a man how she feels and gifts a present to him. So it's more about a woman giving a gift to a man than more traditionally in the US, a man giving a gift for a woman or a mutual exchange. And in response to that, there emerged another holiday, which is called White Day. So White Day, it gets its name from the confectionery company that originally invented it. So this falls 30 days after Valentine's Day, so March 14th. Is that actually 30 days? A month after Valentine's Day. And the company started selling marshmallows originally, and men would buy them and they would give this gift to the women who had given them gifts on Valentine's Day. And so it was originally called Marshmallow Day, and now it's called White Day. And it is interesting to see the signs up that say like White Day all over the place. You know, you are of course a product of where you come from. And so to me, something tickles a little funny to see a sign that says White Day on it. But that is a holiday. It's not a holiday we celebrate in the US, obviously. And so it's exciting to see that tradition come up. And of course, I will kindly remind my husband that White Day is coming up and he needs to get me a gift. Yesterday, I took a moment to go and explore the island a little bit. My video is going to be very sad. It was actually super duper cold and windy and rainy, but it was my day off and I wanted to take advantage of it. And of course, today it is hot. I'm like dying, sweating up here in my recording studio. But yesterday was bitterly cold and windy, but I still decided to go visit Katsuren Castle ruins. So this site, I will unfortunately not have great video from it, but so Katsuren Castle ruins are one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites here in Okinawa. I am not going to try to remember its history and ramble and tell you about it, but I will link below. Though the site itself is actually a really nice place to visit. One, because it's free. Yeah, and because it has parking, which is really exciting here in Okinawa. It's the little things that make me happy, you know. But I did visit this site when I lived here before, so maybe 9 years ago now, and I remember that it was very, very steep and a hard walk up, and I was pleased when I visited this time to see that they had put in some stairs. You can't take the new stairs most of the way up, but you do have to get off of them and walk on the original stairs up to the castle ruins. And those stairs are actually part of the defense of the castle. They were purposely built in a way that they were challenging to climb, and they narrowed as you got closer to the top. The walls are situated in such a way that the defenders of the castle could get on the walls and shoot down on anyone coming up that pathway. And when you come off the more modern stairs and start walking up, you feel it. It is a challenging little bit of walk. The ground is uneven. The steps are not spaced in a way that is natural for walking. And so it's really interesting. The site does not have any reconstruction. Well, I might be a liar. Some of those walls might be reconstructed, but it's not like the former Shuri Castle site that had been like meticulously reconstructed and then unfortunately burned to the ground. But there are like foundation stones. You can see where the pillars of buildings are. And then with some new recent upgrades, they've installed these signs with QR codes, so you can scan and you can see drawings of what the site would have looked like, as well as listen to audio talking about the various things. One of the last inhabitants of the castle before it was overrun, so it finally did get sort of attacked and sieged and taken, was a man called Awamori. And there are several cave sites that are located in the castle where apparently he fled into the caves and was able to escape through them and out. Here in Okinawa, there are so many caves. I've spent a lot of time climbing down into caves. Some of them are more friendly than others. This one, however, had tons of signs about watch out for snakes and looked to be pretty steep and pretty dangerous. So I didn't even attempt to climb into that one. Not that I think they would have allowed me to. So another cool thing about the castle ruins, at least for me personally, is where they are situated. I can actually see from coast to coast of this little peninsula on the east coast of the main island of Okinawa. And off to one side, I can see my house, which is really cool. And off to the other side, I can see the bridge that goes out to some of the smaller islands, such as Miyagi-jima and Hamahiga-jima, which I've shown clips of before in some of my previous episodes. So before going out to the castle ruins, I did spend some time over at one of my favorite pizza places. It's usually one of my favorite places, but yesterday it was miserable. It was so cold and so windy. The owner of the place said, please go sit in your car and I will bring your food out. But I did end up getting chicken teriyaki pizza and some boba tea, of course. Right now, the big thing on island, you can always get boba tea, but also they're making cheese tea, which is like a tea with a mascarpone foam on top. So what I ended up with was a milk tea with boba and like the cheese foam on top, topped with Okinawa and salt cookies, which are these little shortbread cookies. It was amazing, but it was way, way too much for me for this day. But yeah, it was all in all a lovely day, and I think that's all I have to share with you today. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, and if you want to continue to hear more on my series of traditional knitting from various parts of the world, please hit that subscribe button. Also, you can find me on both Instagram and Ravelry as Haxton Knits. I look forward to seeing you guys next time.